It's over 20 years now that I've been a full-time speechwriter, and I feel blessed. I discovered my niche and I've never looked back. It's really, really simple. Ethos plus logos plus pathos equals success. As soon as you think about communication, specifically business communication through that prism, I think you can quickly see what the problem is, that the focus all goes on the logic. They need to be speaking to instincts, then emotions, then logic. Anyone who starts with logic is bound to fail because that's simply not the way the brain works.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Voices of a Business School, hosted by AVT Business School. Just a heads up before we start today's episode is that we did a new format where we called up our remote guest of the day, so the sound is a bit more rough than usual. However, on the episode today, interviewed by our own Jesper Bergman is no other than one of the world's top speechwriters, Simon Lancaster. Besides being an incredible speechwriter, Simon is also a best-selling author, an executive professor, and a TED talker. So you're definitely in for a treat. Simon has written incredible speeches for politicians and for the CEOs of many of the biggest companies in the world, including Unilever, Nokia, and Nestlé. So when we ask, what does it take to speak like a leader? There is, without a doubt, no greater than Simon. Did you guys know that there is a secret language of leadership? Sounds intriguing, right? In this episode, Simon sets out the techniques that you can use to speak like a leader. Being one of the kindest and most insightful people, we can't wait for you guys to be let in on his wise guidance as well. So, without further ado, thanks for tuning in and let's dive into it.
Thank you very much for joining us on today's podcast, Simon Lancaster. Simon Lancaster runs Bespoke, a specialist speechwriting agency. And over the last 15 years, Simon has written numerous speeches for top politicians and business leaders. And he also runs courses in creative speechwriting, and he hosts events for speechwriters as well. Along that, he also teaches on the executive MBA here at AVT Business School, and he also teaches, coaches, and facilitates discussions around speechwriting to some of our corporate clients. So thank you very much for joining us today, Simon.
Jesper, it's so good to be talking to you, and I'm just so sorry that we're not together in Copenhagen, because we've had some great moments over there at AVT Business School. The courses on the language of leadership, I mean, genuinely, like in my heart, I feel such affection because we've seen such moments of transformation going on. We do this 2-day course where we do storytelling, and the participants on those courses, they go through quite a journey, you know, and some of them come in a little bit cautious about whether they can open up, whether they can change their style of communication. And by the end of day 2, I mean, you know, we're having some moments in that room. So anyway, I'm just sorry I'm not in Copenhagen with you.
Well, you'll be here soon enough, Simon. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
We're looking forward. But to start off, let's get a couple of reactions from you to, first of all, of course, condolences to the death of the Queen. She's reigned for over 70 years. What's your take upon, you know, how do people actually react to the death of the Queen in the UK?
Do you know what? It's really, really strange. Last Thursday, when the news came out, I was actually at a book launch in London with my old boss, Alan Johnson, who was a politician that I worked for, a really great guy. He was one of these people who had been a postman and then had been in the trade unions and then he'd gone into politics and very almost became prime minister, actually. He was home secretary, shadow chancellor, did very senior jobs. But he was launching his book on Thursday when the news came through. And so it was a very, very strange evening. And even more bizarrely, I'd been with Alan Johnson on 9/11 as well. We'd been together back, September the 11th, 2001, and it felt like a similar kind of magnitude, actually. And the way that people respond to big news like 9/11 or the death of the Queen is really, I mean, it can go either way. In actual fact, the response on Thursday night was very similar to the way I responded on 9/11. It ended up like I didn't really want to go home. You know, it was just, and everyone just wanted to stay together. And we ended up on Thursday night. Everyone stayed out until like about 3 o'clock in the morning. We all went to a piano bar near the embankment and we're standing around the piano singing along with what were the classics. There was some ABBA there, you know, Beatles songs, Oasis songs and stuff like that. And everyone ended up drinking far too much. And so on Friday, I and I'm sure everyone else who'd been at the party was in the most shocking state, couldn't move at all. But it's interesting the way that people deal with these kind of events, because you do go through a sort of process. Obviously, you know, people talk about denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, all of these things that you go through. And you see this almost at a national level. That I think to start with, there was, you know, just a bit of kind of shock, I think, from everyone. And then you get the acceptance. And now there's, you know, there's a bit of the anger is beginning to seep in. And, you know, the discourse, you know, there's, I think it's about 1 in 4 people in Britain are Republicans. So we'd just have done with the monarchy. Prince Charles has done some pretty courageous, which isn't as complimentary as it sounds, because some courageous things since becoming king, not least appointing Prince Andrew to be his kind of his stand-in should he fall ill. And this is a very controversial decision. You know, it's very tricky. He went to do a signing. I don't know whether you've seen this video. He did a signing. He had in Hillsborough, and he completely lost his rag. And of course, you know, the Queen was famous for her self-discipline, her restraint, her complete emotional control. Almost her emotional control was almost a fault at times, you know. And Charles has been king for like 4 days, and already he's throwing a complete wobbly about his pen leak, and it's kind of, you know, you've got to keep a lid on that. I mean, all of us who work in business, who are professionals, you know, we have things go wrong every now and then. When I've been presenting at AET, you know, I've wound up with ink on my hands. So I try to, you know, I try not to start screaming, shouting and swearing at everyone when it happens, though.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you could certainly look up King Charles' signing ceremony at Northern England's Hillsborough Castle. And where he says, I can't bear this bloody thing. So has he actually responded to it, or somebody, you know, have they actually, you know, commented on it or anything, or just trying to keep it silent?
They're keeping silent, which I'm sure is absolutely the right strategy. But he needs to watch this. You know, we're a democracy, and it's a constitutional monarchy, and 1 in 4 people are Republicans in the country. And I think one of the reasons that we tolerate that is because the Queen was always perceived as being someone who was apolitical, who wouldn't push herself forward, who could keep a lid on herself. And with Charles, there's always been a fear that maybe his character and temperament, you know, were slightly against that. And what we saw with that pen incident was someone, you know, and I mean, fine if it's a one-off. I think people will be sympathetic and charitable. He's going through some stuff. But we've known Charles for a long while. He's not new on the scene. We've known him for 70 years. And this idea of him being a little bit, this exasperation, complete exasperation, is kind of in keeping with what we've already always said and feared about him, actually.
Oh, interesting. And but it certainly seems like, you know, there's huge respect around the Queen, at least, you know, from the cues and how it's being transmitted throughout the world, I think.
Absolutely. Even people who are staunch Republicans have huge respect for the Queen. And have huge respect for her. People who were fiercely against the monarchy, they see in her someone who was absolutely admirable, a leader who was an exemplar of every kind of virtue, actually, humility, service, duty, respect, everything that you would look to see in a leader. She did embody. And so you're absolutely right. I think everyone is sorry, but equally, this appears to have been a good death. She was working on Tuesday, she passed on Thursday. And I think, probably all of us would long for a death that was like that. And so I think it's it's a life that you can celebrate as well. So I don't think it's cause for sadness so much as celebration, really.
Sure. Simon, how did you actually become interested in speech writing?
Well, I always wanted to be a songwriter, Jesper. So literally from the age of 11, I was writing pretty much a song a day.
Oh, wow.
And when I left school, I was playing piano in a restaurant in London and still writing a song a day. And all the time I was sending my songs to record companies. And the response was always the same. It was, and I tried to get better. And literally, I plugged away at this for probably about 10 years or 15 years. In my mid-20s, though, I was like, okay, I'm never going to be Lennon or McCartney or even Gary Barlow, and so probably another career beckoned. And so I got into politics. I worked as a private secretary, and then my kind of the knack for words, I suppose, and some of the devices that I'd learned writing songs, things like metaphor, imagery, rhythm, all of these tricks that you play when you're writing songs, they were very, very transferable to speech writing. But the feedback was completely different. When I wrote songs, no one wanted to hear them. Whereas when I was writing speeches, people were saying, this is pretty good, actually. This is pretty good. And so I discovered my niche, and I've never looked back. And I mean, it's over 20 years now that I've been a full-time speechwriter, and I feel blessed. So some of us are lucky enough to get into something which we both love doing, and people think we're pretty good at doing it. And I certainly feel that I've found my niche, and I'm just going to keep doing it until the day I die. And hopefully I'll have a death like the Queen as well, where I write a speech on Tuesday and I'm dead on Thursday. That's a nice positive idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Great. So Simon, just take us through the art of rhetoric, where you discovered also Aristotle has actually written, early on about the art of rhetoric.
Yeah, so this came to me, I think, after I'd been a speechwriter for 3 or 4 years. And I was just kind of bumbling along, writing speeches like I'd write songs. And then my wife's uncle, who's a classicist, said, well, if you're writing speeches, you must read the great books on rhetoric. You need to read Aristotle, Cicero, Quintilian. And so I started going back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And all of a sudden, all of these amazing names for techniques and principles that I'd been applying unconsciously for years started becoming apparent. And indeed, Aristotle, his big thing in his book, Rhetoric, which is almost as good a book as my own books on communication, what he says is that great speeches need these 3 things: ethos, which is the credibility of the speaker; logos, which is the logic or apparent logic of the argument; and pathos, which is the emotions of the audience. And that's his formula. And it's really, really simple. Ethos plus logos plus pathos equals success. And as soon as you think about communication, specifically business communication, through that prism, I think you can quickly see what the problem is, that the focus all goes on the logic without regard to the ethos or the pathos. And so basically, they're the 2 things where you need to push up the dials. Make sure that your character's coming through, that people know you're trustworthy. They know that you've got good intentions. Connecting people emotionally as well, getting the pathos going, which you do through storytelling and through imagery and through the use of history. And so that's where you can make a big difference as a speechwriter, ethos and pathos.
When you do these courses, you often say that it's only 1 in 5 people who actually trust political and business leaders to tell the truth. So hence it's really hard to get, through to people. Do you see, is it because of the pathos, trying to get that emotional connection to people, that is causing the problem, or is it a lack of character or credibility, basically? How do you see that play together?
I think it's how you present yourself. That when we know someone is a CEO, then we're thinking of them as a CEO. And as a CEO, we understand what CEOs are there to do. They're there to grow their business. They're literally under a legal duty to maximize returns to shareholders. And that's what we've got in mind. So basically, we're sitting there and thinking, you're a CEO, you want my money. That's it. That's all. You want my money. So if they lead with I am the CEO of this company, we're going to be skeptical and cynical, suspicious of them. Whereas if they start off saying, I'm a human being, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a man, I'm a musician, whatever, then we're like, now I'm connecting with you. I'm connecting with you in a completely different way. And I trust you. If you're coming to me as a family man or as a musician or a team player, someone who plays football or hockey or whatever you play, then we're like, now I can see some connections with you. And that's how you overcome it, in short. So I'm always about finding the human connection between people.
Great. And you also discovered, how the neuroscientists basically link, why the art of rhetoric actually works. You basically discovered, how the brain works, so as well as opposed to initially thinking, okay, this might work, or this seems to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was working with some very senior business people, actually, where they were asking me to look at the neurosciences that they were looking at as they developed a new product, and they were thinking about the branding of that product, and they were talking about how we've got to connect with instincts first, and then emotions, and then logic. And I was like, wow, this is like basically your ethos, pathos, logos, and I think it's a great validation, actually, of what Aristotle was saying, that according to neuroscience, it still works. So you need to speak to people's instincts first. This is where we start processing information, whatever it is. When you're meeting someone for the first time, or you're going through your emails, or you're hearing a presentation, whatever it is, you start with an instinctive response. And so this is where people need to be hitting first. They need to be speaking to instincts, then emotions, then logic. Anyone who starts with logic is bound to fail, because that's simply not the way the brain works.
Oh, perfect. And if you were to give listeners, just one advice about how to improve, to emotionally connect, would you describe one tool as such, whether that's stories or using metaphors or rhyme or
well, if I can be cheeky, I'd like to give your listeners 3 bits of advice. And the first bit of advice is that you should always speak in threes, which is why I'm going to give you 3 bits of advice. So this is the rule of 3. And this is something that the ancient Romans and ancient Greek rhetoricians used to advocate. But it's also something that has been checked. The University of California did a study in 2013 that showed people are more likely to believe arguments that come in 3 parts than 4 parts. So that's my first bit of advice, speak in threes. Second bit of advice, speak in images. Paint pictures for people, whether you're doing that through metaphor, through story, or whatever it is. Most of our sensory neurons are devoted to processing visual information. And so always give people pictures and images. Third bit of advice, always remember that the people that you're trying to connect with are human beings just like you, with a need to be involved just like you, and need to be respected just like you, and need to belong just like you. So give them all of that. Make them feel respected, make them feel admired, make them feel like they belong. And if you do that, you're meeting some of their deepest needs, and in return, they'll give you all the support you're looking for.
Brilliant. Currently, is there a business leader or political leader that you think is doing a particularly good job of actually, connecting to the emotions with people, whatever you think is yeah?
I will give you a great and maybe surprising example, actually, and that is Meghan Markle. So it plays back to the conversation we were having about the monarchy just earlier. But Meghan Markle is quite phenomenal. She blows my mind, actually. I first came across her when she was on a panel speaking about diversity and gender representation at One Young World. Now, One Young World, I would suggest all of your listeners check it out. Actually, it's a fabulous progressive organisation of young leaders from around the world that meets somewhere different around the world every year. The speeches that are given there are nothing short of phenomenal, and some huge names have been there over the years. Everyone from kind of Bob Geldof to Malala, all incredible people. And anyway, one of my clients was giving a speech there, which I'd written in 2014, and I caught Meghan Markle's panel, and she had this brilliant story that she was telling about when she was a young girl, and she was studying social science, and they were watching some adverts, and she'd seen an advert for washing up liquids that had talked about how women all over America were throwing away their gloves because of this new washing up liquid, and they were analysing this, and she was like, well, why are they just saying women? It's not just women that wash up. And anyway, she wrote to the CEO of Procter & Gamble, whose washing up liquid it was, and the CEO changed the advert in response to her letter. And so it then said people all over America rather than women all over America. And so as a 10-year-old girl, you can watch this clip on YouTube, you see her interviewed, and I mean, what an extraordinary young girl she is. You can see she's quite something. You can see she's going to wind up doing something important. And anyway, she told this story, and her message was basically, if you see something you don't like in the world, speak out and change it. And I mean, of course, it's that ethos which has run through her life, which has seen her come into a bit of a running against the British royal family. But I think she's an extraordinary communicator. She has incredible empathy. I think you can see when she speaks, she's brilliant at storytelling. And so I would advise your listeners to check her out. Check out the speech that she did at the United Nations in 2015, before she'd even met Harry. And you're like, hang on a sec, this woman's good. She's good. And I mean, I think just watch her. I wouldn't be surprised if she winds up president of the United States. I mean, she is a phenomenal woman.
All right, she's actually interested in politics.
Well, she's interested in change. I mean, that's what she says.
Okay.
And so I think she'll go wherever you can achieve change. And I think she's doing that at the moment because she has this unique profile around the world. But I would have thought, if you could get your hands on the levers of power that they have in the Oval Office, you could probably do quite a bit, I would have thought.
All right. Simon, you are famous around the world, actually, for delivering a quick speech structure. And you post also on Twitter, on YouTube, TikTok. I've seen, not myself, but you showed me that you also post on TikTok. So would you just run through what those steps are basically in when you are composing a speech? Yeah.
So this is a really brilliant, quick, off-the-shelf structure that you can use, folks, anytime that someone says to you, can you just quickly come up with something to say? It's a great way of honing your argument and coming up with something powerful. And there are 6 steps to it, okay? So step 1, 3 breathless sentences. Sound urgent, sound excited, like you're hyperventilating, grabs attention from the off. Step 2, 3 repetitive sentences, 3 sentences in which you repeat the opening clause. Repeating the opening clause makes you sound strong. Repeating the opening clause makes you sound statesmanlike. Repeating the opening clause makes you sound sincere. Then you move on to step number 3. Step number 3 is 3 contrasting sentences or opposites. So this is about old and young, rich and poor, black or white. It's about helping everyone. So yeah, this makes you sound like you're balanced, like you're weighing something up. Step number 4 is metaphor, where you depict something as something which it is not. Metaphors plant images in our mind. You see, I'm using a metaphor there. Mm-hmm. You plant images in our mind that you hope will take root and blossom and grow, but you don't want to get carried away. If you can taste sick in your mouth while you're saying it, you've gone too far. And you need to save room for step number 5, which is exaggeration, where you go completely over the top, because this kind of speech will change anyone's mind of anything, anywhere, anytime. And I absolutely guarantee to you with all my heart that this is going to make you sound like Obama. So a bit of exaggeration. And then, end with a rhyme. Step 6, end with a rhyme, because rhyme is sublime and rhyme works every time and rhyme doesn't cost a dime. So that's basically it, Jesper. And you'll see me do those 6 steps so many times before. But yeah, I do this kind of improv routine where I'll ask people to throw me a topic on the spot and I'll instantly improvise a speech using those techniques.
Brilliant. I've not asked Simon to whether he would actually do a speech on the fly, but I promise you, if you've not seen him doing it, you can actually Google Simon Lancaster Speak Like a Leader, and he's done a TED Talk, has been viewed over 4 million times or whatever it is now, Simon. So you can actually see him improvise a speech on the fly in a TED Talk. He's not been preempted, at least, and he's done that numerous times here at AVT or to the different audience that he's been teaching and helping out with their speech writing skills. Simon, do you want to do one, or should we leave the audience?
I'm really happy to do one. It's a shame your listeners aren't in, because it would be wonderful. They could throw a suggestion. Otherwise, the suspicion is, if you give me one, that people will think it was a setup. But I'm very happy to take your weirdest idea, Jesper, and run with it now. If you want to throw me one,
let's go with it. Of course, in Europe, there's this energy crisis we are looking into that will cause major upsets for businesses and people in general. I think I'm sure now you're preoccupied with the death of the Queen, the new king, but again, there's a huge concern, with being dependent on Russia for gas, etc. I was thinking, on that note, you would make an argument for there will be no energy crisis this winter. So, I'm thinking, so I don't know what will basically be the solution, but I'm just thinking, a counter argument. Why should we not be concerned about the energy crisis? And I promise to the listeners, I've not asked Simon. So again, we hope that we will see you and you'll have the chance to experience Simon Lancaster doing it on the fly. And again, otherwise, you can look up Simon Lancaster Speak Like a Leader on YouTube, and you will see him doing it on the fly in a TED Talk.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, are you ready, Simon?
Yeah. Let's do it. Okay.
Thank you.
Conflict in Ukraine, soaring energy prices, fears about winter, people are worried about whether they'll be able to heat their homes. People are worried about whether their elderly relatives are going to be okay. People are worried about the costs of everything these days. Instead of fearing the coming winter, today I come to you with a message of reassurance. Things are not spiraling out of control in the way you fear. In actual fact, behind the scenes, governments, regulators, and all sorts of actions are taking action to protect your best interests. And this will ensure that this winter you are not just safe, you are all secure. There is a fear that this crisis has been spiraling out of control, but I can today make to all of your listeners a reassurance from the bottom of my heart. We have done everything it is conceivably possible to do to safeguard energy and to bring costs down in your interests. We've been investing in securing supplies, in making sure supplies are sustainable, in making sure supplies are safe. And I absolutely assure you that this is no cause for you to worry. And I very much hope that in a few months' time, I'm not going to have to say sorry.
All right. Thank you, Simon. I know it's hard when you also with the evidence, so even though it's logical, but you certainly appeal to my instinctive brain as well. So thank you very much for doing it, Simon.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, on that point though, it's, that's like a fun exercise there, but you do see, if you have a look at the way that prime ministers, presidents around the world are communicating about the energy crisis, they are all depicting their actions in lists of threes. There are three things we have to do: safe, secure, sustainable. What actions are we taking? We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing the other. They're all using the rule of three because they know it works. The other thing they're all using is metaphor. And I don't know how discourse has gone in Denmark actually about this, but we're talking about it over here as a storm. So a storm makes out that this is a force of nature, that the reason for the current energy crisis is it's a force of nature. It's not because of a failure of regulation, not because of governments, rather instead this just happened. The same like weather just happens. And so that's interesting. They're using metaphor there to frame it, and it depicts them as then the captain of the ship of state having to navigate these stormy waters. And, of course, we understand that you don't rock the boat when you're navigating stormy waters. So it primes us to get behind our Prime Minister and win support. So those 6 steps, you do see them really being used, even though my speech wasn't very good. It was a bit ridiculous, a bit illogical. Nevertheless, the devices in there very much are playing a role in the debate on all this at the moment.
Oh, perfect. No, thank you much for joining us here today. We will see you shortly, but I hope the listeners got some good takeaways, some techniques to use in their daily lives. And we hope that you keep listening in, and we might see Simon back here in the studio, perhaps. So thank you very much, Simon, for joining us.
Very much looking forward to my return to Copenhagen. Thank you, Jesper.